anything Christian said. I personally think that they ought to raise our pay to at least where they pay us for a soda, a meeting.
Test 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3.
Came back.
everyone, and welcome to the February 24th meeting of the Auburn School Committee. Are you hearing lots of noise like I am? Maybe find out why. There's a lot of moving parts to all of this. But in the meantime, please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You good? Do we hear any other noises? Echoes? Little, but okay. We have a lot of mics on tonight, so I think there's a specific distance you're supposed to keep. All right, let's start with introductions down here to my right, please.
David Simpson at large. Brian Belknap, Ward 4.
Corin McWigan, Ward 1.
Pam Hart, Ward 2.
Karen Matthew, Ward 3.
Connie Brown, Superintendent.
Faith Fontaine at large.
Dan Poisson, Ward 5.
Brian Carrier, Mayor's Representative.
Abigail Fauché, Student Representative.
Thank you, everyone. Let's move on to the consent agenda. This is approval of tonight's agenda, as well as the minutes of the February 3rd, 2021 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve, please? So moved. Thank you, Faith. Thank you, second. Thank you, Mr. Belknap. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion passes. All right, let's open it up for public participation this evening. Do we have anyone here who would like to come speak in public participation? We have moved public participation back into none. Okay, all right, great. And I've been told there's no one here for public participation. So moving on, we have presentations this evening. We have two of them. Our first presentation, should have mentioned before, we're going to flip-flop a couple things around. Student information, Abby is going to share her presentation before we get into the budget presentation. So take it away, Abby. Oh, there you are.
So, my presentation tonight is on the Auburn Food Service. So, the food nutrition program, just a background, they work hard in collaboration with students and members of the community to deliver food to anyone that is 18 years or younger in the school district. The program provides hot and cold lunches to its consumers, and a statistic on the program is that since September, the program has delivered over 75,000 meals to families, and this program is a really great way to get involved in our community. Students, in relation to this program, students are able to participate and receive community service hours. Currently, students have to receive 24 hours in order to graduate unless of the recent fluctuations due to COVID. So the delivery day that this program goes around and gives out meals is on Wednesday, and the delivery time begins at 8:30 a.m. and when your specific route is done, then you are free to leave. So if any students would like to participate, or community members would like to participate, or if anyone needs the delivery service, they can contact Chris Piercy, and I added his number and his email at the bottom of this slideshow. So I wanted to bring up a few conflicts with this. Due to the delivery time in the day, now that we voted to go back to school on Wednesdays, there's conflict between the schedule and the delivery. Students are now currently not able to volunteer because of going in person or being remote. So this would impact the volunteer hours, and it would bring the staff down numbers for delivering. There's diverse schedules between classes and individual students on the rotating Wednesdays, for example. Some classes are asynchronous and some are synchronous. So while half of my classes are asynchronous, so I don't have to join Zoom meetings on the days I'm not in person, some days I do. And this conflicts because now I would not be able to participate in this program on the days I'm not in person on rotating Wednesdays. So I wanted to just put the idea out there. I know teachers are doing a lot and all of the students appreciate all of the hard work that they've been doing, but they're not all on the same schedule. So it makes it hard on the students to volunteer, or if they need to go to their jobs on Wednesdays, it's difficult. So just proposing a possible solution on Wednesdays if we are not in person and we have conflicts in life, maybe recording these classes on Wednesdays and posting them or the days we aren't in person because life does happen and people have other commitments. And students do help this program a lot. Community members, they have jobs, they have bills to pay. Their lives are more difficult than students, to be honest. And you can't really always depend on them for every Wednesday. So it's hard with the numbers to deliver. And I included a picture. This is the routes that the buses take around Auburn, so just to show how many families and people depend on this program.
Abby, how many students have volunteered for this, for food delivery? Do you know a number, how many kiddos have done this? Or roughly?
It's usually a handful. There's not really a lot. It is mostly community members.
Okay.
Like adults, but I think if it's more out there and more students know about it, they will participate to get those hours, or if they just want to volunteer because they feel the need.
Okay. Do you have to have a driver's license, or you can get on the buses? Because volunteers get on the buses. I'm talking students who don't necessarily have a driver's license right now.
There is not buses. You go to the area where they load up all the buses, and the buses do drive you around to deliver the foods, but to get there and to get back to your home, it is not. There's no bus.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Any other questions for Abby on this? Thank you, Abby. Thank you so much. All right, moving on to the first of many, the 2021-2022 budget presentation this evening.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move closer to Mr. Hanson, since he's going to drive, and so first of all, the first budget that I have presented to the school committee. So with that, I took some license to do things a little bit differently than have been done in the past, and we'll see if they were well received or 22-23 needs to be done completely differently. So the first thing that I did differently was something that was recommended at the House of Mr. Carrier, and that was to do a budget message. You may recall back when we discussed the city charter and the fact that the city manager submits a budget message, that it was asked me if I could do that, and I said absolutely. And so that was a change that we made this year, and it went out on Friday the 19th. It has been posted on our website, so again, trying to follow in line with the goals the committee set in July. Budget transparency was a big goal, and so this is part of an effort to help with that transparency. So these are a couple of the goals that were set as part of the budget process. One is transparency, that's directly from the school committee goal. The second is that it's efficient. The third is inclusive. One of the things that I've heard consistently since I've been here in Auburn is that you folks want people to participate. And so in order to help with that process, I am going to each of the schools beginning March 1st, that's next Monday, and doing a presentation and a discussion with whoever wants to come, make a voluntary effort, so I'll be there for that. And then in your book is a budget calendar. Some people think that budget starts in December or January and ends usually 2 months after that, and that's really inaccurate. If you think about this, you started talking about budget in July, and you set it as one of your goals. You continue talking about budget in October, November, December, January, and now here we are in February when we kick off the budget process. And so that calendar is in the books, it's on the website so people can have it so they know. For example, that tonight the East Auburn Elementary School budget was 1%. So Adam, next slide. So one of the things that I have changed, and I just want to spend a few minutes talking about this, is to orient you to your budget books. They're a little hefty, and so I'll apologize in advance for their girth. But I think in the interest of trying to give you as much information in a way that's efficient, this is the best one I've come up with so far. So you have the budget message, you have the calendar, and then we begin by cost centers. And I have made some changes again with some of these cost centers. So the first one is cost center 1. This is regular education. I have divided it further by school. And so you can pull up, for example, I'm going to pick on Sue again, the East Auburn Elementary School. You will see their enrollments, you will see their class sizes, you will see their ratios. And then as you get further into that, you'll see the total budget by cost center. And then you will see budget summaries, budget detail, and another change that I've made, and again, this was your idea, and I stole it shamelessly, was that there's what I call an at a glance in each of these sections. So for example, I'll pick on cost center 6, because that's where the superintendent resides. There is an at a glance which lists all of the people in cost center 6. And so you'll have C. Brown and the cost of her salary, the cost of her benefits, what I call roll-ups, but nobody else calls in that name. There are things like unemployment, workers' comp, social security, whatever those additional costs are, the benefit costs, and then a total. Now, I had a question from the Sun Journal today from Kim Kavorka asking me if those totals were just salaries. So I want to make sure that you understand when you look at those at-a-glance pages that that's the total cost for Connie Brown. That's not just Connie Brown's salary. So that's in there for you for a quick and easy reference. So thank you for that. So as you go through those cost centers, I think you'll find them helpful. You will also find the total staff by building, the regular instruction summaries, and then the cost center 1. All the cost centers are set up the same way. So once you get familiar with the first one, which is Article 1, which is the biggest one, then as you go through 2, 3, 4, and so on, you will have an understanding of how those things are set up. So the proposed budget as it stands right now, and this is the superintendent's budget, it has not been approved by the committee, $49,347,475. Adam? And what I want to say, and you'll hear this a lot, is that this budget includes the first payment for every little. And the budget increase right now is $3,544,000 and change, and that includes a state-funded debt payment of $2,143,000. What I've learned working with school committees over the years who have building projects is they don't understand that the cost of that project is added to their budget. And maybe I wasn't here when budget school passed in Auburn. Maybe that was clearly understood. But that cost and a corresponding amount of debt revenue from your 279 is included in your budget. So that's why that budget is up $3.5 million. Thanks, Adam. So we're going to roll into individual school presentations, but there are a couple other things I want to preview with you this evening before we get into the schools. And the first is, as I work hard on transparency, as people around the horseshoe ask questions, Adam is going to record the question, we will give an answer, and then all of those questions are going to be posted on the website as a Q&A. So suppose somebody wanted to know about the relationship of the CRF grants and what they look like in the regular budget, or something to that effect. So that's a question. regardless of whether we know the answer or not at the meeting we're in, we will take the question and record it as one as having been asked to. So people can have a sense of what those questions are. The other thing, and you know this already, having worked with me for 7 or 8 months, if I don't know the answer, I will tell you I don't know the answer, but I will get the answer for you. So it may not be at the meeting we're in. We're going to be spending a lot of Wednesdays together for the next 4 or 5 months, so settle in, get comfortable, because we'll all be here Wednesday nights. And then finally, before we get into the schools, in the budget calendar is a detail of which departments or schools are presenting. And so if you have a particular question, let's suppose your question pertains to special ed, I would ask that you try to hold that for the special ed presentation that evening. And that will make you, I think, much more efficient in the way that you use your time for these meetings. So that being said, are there any opening questions before we get going with East Auburn? No? Okay. Dr. Doris, you are up.
So Dr. Rose, don't have to sit when your people at home are letting us know they can't hear. Okay. Hi, Dr. Doris. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to share information with you tonight about the East Auburn budget. As Superintendent Brown mentioned, we use the school committee goals to drive the budget process, and we also use those goals to prioritize how we spend our dollars to support student learning. So what you're seeing in this first slide is information about our enrollment. This first table on the left shows our current enrollment, and as you know, we are the smallest school in Auburn. We have 1 teacher per grade level plus 1 multi-graded teacher. And right now our current enrollment is 167. And this is a little bit low for us. We do have a few families that are homeschooling, and that is why it is lower than it usually is. We expect those families to be returning next year. So we currently have 8.5 teachers, and that 0.5 is a 0.5 pre-K teacher. So we only have 1 session of pre-K at East Auburn. And our average class size right now is 20. So if we look over to the next table, that is our proposed enrollment and our student-teacher ratios for next year. And our proposed, in terms of our projected enrollment, we're projecting 178 students, and we are looking at 9.5 teachers next year, which is an addition of 1 teacher, and our average class sizes will be 19. So I want to mention something about that extra teacher. Having an additional teacher at the K or 1 level is going to allow us to have small class sizes in the primary grades, and it's also going to enable us not to have a multi-graded classroom. So that's going to be ideal because, as we know, small class sizes allow for more individualized instruction and increased learning for our students. Except for that slide, and moving right along. That first little box at the top of the second slide is saying that we have 1 proposed change in staffing next year, and that's the addition of that K or 1 teacher. And then our budget supports 3 major initiatives. And these include the implementation of reading and writing programs. Literacy is going to be a big focus for us moving forward. It will include the implementation of the new phonics program and the implementation of everyday math. So if you're looking at the details of the East Auburn budget, you're going to see materials and resources and supplies that support those 3 initiatives. And I also want to highlight some of the major changes in the budget for next year. We had a couple areas where we're decreasing and 1 area where we're increasing. So you'll see a decrease in office supplies and general bid supplies, and that's because we have some supplies on hand this year. We don't need to order those for next year. And our audio visual supplies line is down because we're not ordering anything in that line this coming year. And then our technology software line is up, and this is because there is a change in how we're going to fund that from the Office of Learning and Teaching to the building level. So we're picking up the cost of that at the building level. So our overall budget is $35,512.73, and that's a 2.2% increase. And then this last table on the right is showing our current staff list. And one thing to note here is that as a small school, we do share specialists, some special ed staff, and a guidance counselor with other schools. And that's it for East Auburn.
Can I ask you one quick question, Dr. Doris? When we look at right now, you're tracking current enrollment, and I guess this would be for all buildings right now. That is cohort A, cohort B, cohort C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. They're all included in that. As a first grader, you are counted no matter what cohort you're in. Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions for East Auburn right now? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Doris.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Bodette of Fairview School.
Hello.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share Fairview's budget and our process. So our current, you'll see it's set up very similar to Mrs. Doris's. The first chart is our current enrollment, which as of today is 486 students. Which brings us, our class sizes range from 14 to 26, that's including our remote students. We do have 25 classroom teachers, K-6, two pre-K teachers, 3 self-contained teachers in our, we're changing the name, in our EDD program, which is now becoming our Junior Achieve program, but it's old habits. And then we have 2 resource room teachers and 1 interventionist. And so our numbers, 486, include our self-contained students, our pre-K students, our cohort A, cohort B, C, D, E, and F. My projected enrollment is 490 with the potential of 510 if some of our homeschool students and our students who went to private schools return. But the numbers you'll see here are based on that 490. And that would give us a range of a class size of 13 to 22. I did make a mistake on grade 1. That should be 1 to 13, not 1 to 14. I apologize. And so that does give us a range of 13 to 22. And I do want to note that you'll see names for projected staff, but that doesn't mean that's where they're going to land. They're placeholders, and we watch class enrollment and class sizes carefully, and then I work with the staff, and we make decisions on who would like a change or who will best fit. Some of our staffing changes for next year. Sadly, my secretary is retiring, and I am losing 2 ed techs in the Junior Achieve, otherwise known as the EDD program. And again, the potential grade level changes within the building based on class sizes. That's always a moving target. Some of the initiatives where the budget is supporting is the implementation of a phonics program, which is a district initiative, which will provide much needed consistency. We'll continue to focus on literacy and the Lucy Calkins reading virtual lessons. I'll talk more about that below. And then our continued PBIS implementation. And as you know or may know, PBIS is a proactive approach to improving and maintaining school safety with a focus on prevention. We build our budget with a 0%. We start at 0 and it's needs-based. So my teachers take inventory of what they need, and then they ask for or request items that will support our initiatives, support what they're working on in literacy, math, and the content areas. So all our accounts show a reduction or stayed the same with the exception of one, which was the technology line. and I'll go over some of the things that are in that line. Some of these resources were provided free of charge this year, and so they were able to use them, and that may not be the case next year, which is why they've been added to the budget. So they're looking to upgrade Seesaw, which is a platform that allows teachers to create student portfolios over time, has additional tools to collaborate and share lesson plans. It allows them to add more assignments and communicate with students by providing feedback and then sending assignments back and forth to students. We currently use Seesaw, but we use the free platform, which doesn't allow many of these features. The next resources help with differentiated instruction. So RAS Kids provides level tests. Teachers can monitor comprehension skills, fluency, books are printable that can take them home. And then the Lucy Coffins virtual teaching resources, which I mentioned above. These are resources the teachers have been using. It's focused on important aspects of reading instruction, allowing teachers to review or use the resources in their classrooms, or if kids miss school, they can actually view them. They can be seen at home or in the classroom. So if they've missed a concept, it's a great way to go back and reteach. It's also a good form of professional development with the Lucy Coffins reading program. And then Literacy Footprints is another resource that supports our interventions. For interventions, its titles aligned with guided reading. And then the last one is our Swiss platform, and this is a database. It holds our school-wide data, which is used for planning, and it goes hand in hand with PBIS. So that's something we have been using and will continue to use. So our overall budget is down approximately 5%.
Do you know, Mrs. Bodette, do you have confirmation that those virtual resources are available again next year?
I believe so, based on our ordering form, like what I filled out.
Okay.
Well, we didn't order it, but what it was pricing for next year, so I'm assuming, but
Okay.
not sure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mrs. Bodette?
Question. When we talked about literacy curriculum changing, I thought the Lucy Coffin method wasn't going to be used. Was
So I know that there's a literacy review that's going to be happening, and certainly if any changes are made, that would not be ordered. So that's in there because that is our current program, and like Dr. Brown said, we've started the budget process a while ago, and so this reflects that work. But certainly if any changes are made, that would be eliminated from the budget.
Okay. And what's a resource room teacher?
A resource room teacher services our students who have IEPs. So they go in and out. So they're in their classroom, but they come out and just get maybe 30 minutes of reading instruction or 30 minutes of math instruction. They get what they need, but they're in their general education class for the majority of their day.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mrs. Bodette? Seeing none, thank you so much.
And I think Mrs. Mitchell is next.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to share the important highlights of the Park Avenue school budget. In addition to staffing, a well-equipped classroom is essential for teaching and learning. This primarily includes basic supplies, instructional supplies, books, and technology software. The budget for school year 21-22 is presented to you tonight is almost $6,000 less than this year's total budget, which is about 11% decrease. All accounts show either a reduction or they stay the same, with the exception of the technology line. The technology line includes an upgrade to Seesaw, which is a platform that allows teachers to share lesson plans and to send assignments to students. Also digital resources to support remote learning and to help differentiate instruction like RAS Kids, vocabulary A to Z, and the literacy footprints. And also the Swiss software, which supports our PBIS work and provides us with school-wide data used for planning. Park Avenue student enrollment is 320 students. Staff at Park Avenue includes 19 classroom teachers with an average class size of 17. Multi-grade classrooms have been eliminated for next year, allowing teachers to deeply explore one grade level's content, curriculum, and instructional practices together as a grade level learning team. 3 special ed resource room teachers and a speech-language pathologist service about 50 special ed students at Park Avenue. And we have 5 ELL teachers who service upwards of 96 students. It is important that we continue to financially support the initiatives of Park Avenue School. Our top 3 initiatives are our PBIS system has developed into a proactive approach in improving school safety and promoting positive behavior. It provides staff and students with strategies in managing social and emotional issues. We are dedicated to improving our literacy instruction with the new Literacy Footprints guided reading program, as well as implementing new phonics programs. And number 3, in order to improve student math achievement, it's essential that we provide teachers with training and professional development to improve our math instruction. So that will be a priority for us next school year. Strong consideration for what is right for kids is the foundation for which a responsible budget was built for Park Avenue School. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Mrs. Mitchell? Yes, Brian?
Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown, what is the cost for the upgrade to Seesaw? I know we're using the free version right now. What is the licensing fee for upgrading to Seesaw? Or upgrading Seesaw to the non-free version?
I will have to get that for you, Mr. Belknap. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's fine. The other one would be the Swiss. I'm curious what we're paying now versus what the new licensing fee would be, so we can just determine what the difference is.
We will have that for you for the next meeting.
And then one last question. Which phonics program are we using? I noticed this one had implementation of phonics programs, sadly, or district initiative, and then the last one had Blevins. I'm assuming they must be the same since it's a district initiative, but
Yes.
okay, just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and I will hand it over to Cheryl Klein.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share more information about the Sherwood Heights budget. You'll see on the first slide that Sherwood Heights has a current enrollment of 347 students. Our class sizes range from a low of 10 and 11 in our pre-K classes to a high of 18 and 19 students per teacher in our grade 3 classes. We currently have 20 regular classroom teachers, and the average number of students per class across the entire school is 17 to 18. Our projected enrollment for the 2021-22 year is slightly higher at 361 students. The average class size is anticipated to be 19 students with a low of 15 students per class in kindergarten and grade 2, and a high of 25 to 26 students in grade 6 if all Sherwood students remain at Sherwood. The projection numbers at kindergarten and grade 1 are slightly higher than current enrollment might suggest because a number of our families decided not to enroll for this year or decided to homeschool this year. Overall, Sherwood Heights will need 19 classroom teachers next year, which is a reduction of 1 position. In the next slide, you'll see 2 potential staffing across the school. In an effort to reduce the number of multi-age classrooms, Mike Davis and I have been collaborating to develop a plan for shared responsibility of students within the two schools. You can see on the chart that shows proposed teaching staff in collaboration with Walton, that is on the right, that we have room at Sherwood to take on 7 Walton students in grade 4. This would allow Walton to move a grade 3 and 4 multi-age teacher to grade 3. Sherwood Heights would benefit by sending 7 of our 6th grade students to Walton, making the class sizes at that grade level more manageable. The smaller class sizes at Sherwood would allow more individualized attention and feedback for students. The reduction of a teacher at Sherwood Heights would also allow Walton to add a teacher at grade 6. Again, reducing a multi-age teacher while reducing or maintaining reasonable class sizes of grades 5 and 6 for both schools. In the next slide, we do also continue to implement PBIS. This will include the utilization of Swiss software to monitor behaviors, weekly meetings with Jillian Close, direct instruction regarding expected behaviors and coping strategies, and the expansion of intervention strategies to address interventions for students who need additional support. Looking at the cost centers, the overall budget for the cost centers over which I have control is $54,081.20. This is a decrease of 1%. The most notable differences from the last budget to this one are in 4 lines. Office supplies are down due to the recognition that we do not need nearly as much paper as was budgeted for this year. The periodicals and subscriptions line is up to provide additional nonfiction reading resources in order to support reading development that requires students to compare and draw evidence from multiple sources. Additionally, this would support recognized reading preferences for boys who historically underperform girls in reading at Sherwood Heights. The furniture and equipment line is greater due to the need to purchase some magnetic whiteboards for classrooms that do not have them, and the addition of a seesaw upgrade for primary level teachers, and additional requests for RAS Kids reading software and IXL to support math and ELA have pushed the instruction related software line upward. The last slide for Sherwood Heights provides a listing of all full-time and part-time staff. Sherwood Heights will have 55 full-time employees next year and 8 part-time employees for a total of 63 people on our staff. Any questions for me?
So the students going to Walton, or students coming from Walton to Sherwood Heights, how will that be handled? Is that going to be a volunteer basis, or how would something like that be handled?
Those are still to be worked out.
Okay. And then I'm guessing with the upgrades in technology to Seesaw with the different schools, is that being divided amongst the school? Because we're just going to, it's one upgrade, correct, that all the district will use?
Yes.
Okay. And so that's divided by the cost per school?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question. And I guess I'm just curious. I'm seeing the different grades, and grade 3 only has 1 class, as opposed to like grade 4 has 3 different classes, grade 2 has multiple classes. Is that because we're doing that switcheroo with Walton?
So I should have 2 third-grade classrooms for next year. I forgot to put my contacts in this morning, so I can't quite see.
Yeah, there's
the
only
screen.
one grade 3. There's 2 grade 2s, 1
There
grade
should
3.
be,
You have this.
and Joel will be teaching grade 3, or so will be teaching grade 2.
This year you have listed only 1 grade 3,
And then next year as well, there's only 1.
and
grade
next
3.
year is only 1 grade 3.
So, we have at grade grade 3 this year, 3 teachers. Next year, we are slated to have 2 teachers at that grade level.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'll turn this over to Andrew Bart of Washburn.
Well, good evening, and thank you for the chance to talk through our Washburn budget with all of you this evening. On my first slide, you have 2 charts. They're pretty similar in nature. Our current enrollment right now is 259, which is not this slide. These are just the projected ones for next year. As you can see, our projected enrollment for next year is slightly down. Dr. Doris and I will be working together to look at grade 1 and grade 3 and kind of sharing some of that student enrollment together, so I can have pretty comparable class sizes with everyone else. I will only have 1 first grade and 1 third grade due to the numbers. And no multis as well as the same as all the other elementary schools. I am having some staff changes. I have Diane Getchell, who's retiring after 43 years of service, and I am making some switches from some classroom teachers for the following school year. For our initiatives, like all the elementary schools, we are focusing on literacy and math and using our curriculum that is provided. And we are going on our 5th year of PBIS, so we're kind of chugging along at a nice pace. I consult with Jennifer Butterworth. Some of my ed techs meet with her for social emotional stuff as well. And we also use the Swiss, which helps us make decisions on where we need to reteach certain behavior expectations and kind of follow some of those office referrals. My math coach, Lisa Coburn, implemented some math fluency kits this year. First in kindergarten and 2nd grade are doing addition and subtraction, and has requested to use some of those same kits for the upper grades for multiplication and division. So as you can see, I'm asking for a couple kits for our older kids to kind of supplement and enhance the math instruction. Our cost centers, you can see most of them are a reduction or a decrease. One increase is for our music teacher. She needs some money to take some of our kids to All-State next year. That's an annual fee every year. And textbooks as well, as I have to have the Blevins as well. So just kind of, that's the increase because of those resources. And on the 3rd page is just the who's who at Washburn, what they do, what their position is, and so forth. And the 4th slide, the same thing.
Any questions for Mr. Bard? Dr. Brown, I have a question, just a quick question. I am seeing Xana Bloser, those are handwriting. Is that a district-wide curriculum? Do all of our schools, all of our elementary schools use Xana Bloser?
I would defer to Mrs. Mogul. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Yes.
Saying yes. Okay, fabulous. Thank you so much. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Bard? All right, seeing none, thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Bob Griffin, the principal of the middle school, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you folks this evening and give you a brief overview of the proposed middle school budget. I remember many years ago when I was a rookie principal, my superintendent at the time giving me some advice and saying, the primary responsibility of the principal is to ensure safety and security of everyone in the school. Number 2 is creating and managing the school budget. So this is work that we all, and certainly I, take incredibly seriously as we go through it. Middle school is structured a little bit different. You're not going to see long names, long rosters of where teachers are and stuff like that. The middle school is we're designed around teams, We have some 2-teacher teams, we have some 4-teacher teams, and they are all, created once we understand the needs of what the incoming population of students are. To look at where we stand now at the middle school, as of a couple days ago, we had 494 students. To give you some context, last year we had 524 students. So like some other schools, we have seen a dip this year. We are projected, based solely on current 6th grade numbers, to increase by 38 students next year. But this year, our average class size, 7th grade, 21, 8th grade, 20. As we look ahead to next year, considering that bump of increase of 38, that would bring our class sizes to about 23 and 21 in 7th and 8th grade. I believe absolutely that we can very well make that work with our existing staff, so I just certainly don't need to increase teachers to accommodate that number. The proposed budget does include a decrease of 2 special education ed tech positions. They have been unfilled for this entire school year, so I do not believe there will be any negative impact to with the elimination of those positions. To talk with you about just a few of the initiatives looking ahead that I'm very proud of. One is full implementation of a new 7th and 8th grade math program. Since I arrived, I believed we needed to do something different with math. You'll be hearing more throughout the budget process about exactly what that math program is in our process of choosing it. I want Auburn Middle School next year to have a fully functional civil rights team. I think that's incredibly important for the work we're doing as a district, and certainly the work we're doing at Auburn Middle School. And I put in the budget that position to be supported with a stipend, similar to things like our student council and yearbook and stuff like that. We will be continuing our work with PBIS, but we're also doing works in very strong partnership with PBIS is restorative practices that we've begun training last year and then continuing this year. We're going to be adding unified basketball at Auburn Middle School next year. If any of you have had the opportunity to see a unified sporting event, it is some of the most powerful stuff you'd ever see, so we're incredibly looking forward to that. There's no cost in our budget for that for the first year. Something new we're working on right now in collaboration with the high school and our GT folks would be next year providing opportunities for a small number of middle school students, our highest achieving students, to actually go to the high school and take courses at the high school. So that's work we're beginning right now to bring all the parameters to that. We are in the process of creating a fully unified Auburn Middle School schedule next year to all sort of through the filter of increasing instructional time. The middle school has historically had multiple schedules. Each team had different schedules and stuff. We're going to be refining that, and that will also allow us to have more flexibility with students being connected to different teachers, taking different classes and things like that. And then the final thing I wanted to mention, we've had an opportunity this year to hire a new athletic coordinator at the middle school, Mr. Timberman. He's been doing a great job. So it is a priority of ours to bring a top-notch athletic experience to our Auburn Middle School student athletes. That includes inventorying and upgrading our equipment and maintaining our equipment, coming up with a process so we are keeping track of our uniforms. We are turning over uniforms appropriately and not waiting until we need to do 4 sports worth of uniforms at the same time, having a real system behind that and making sure, for example, that none of our athletes ever need to have a hand-me-down shirt from the high school or anything like that. So that will be a focus we've begun this year, but we'll continue next year. We, like other principals have mentioned, we build our budget from a zero-based approach, so no one assumes they're getting any money. So that is where lots of conversations with me. It's me saying no to a lot of people throughout the process. But with the zero base comes increases and decreases in certain lines. And I really want to like point out like one good example where you might look and see a decrease in athletic officials by $1,500. Please absolutely know that's not representing a decrease in the number of sports activities we're doing or the number of officials we're having. That is us paying very, very close attention to what we have been spending over the last few years and what our projected actual expense will be next year. So then there will be other years where, for example, we might need science teachers might need a couple of microscopes. That year might have a bump of $1,200, but then the next year you may see a decrease of that. But our bottom line at the middle school, what I am proposing is a decrease of about $9,600 over last year, or 8.4%. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank
Thanks.
you so much.
Make sure I have the slides in front of me instead of looking up all the way across. Try to be as timely as possible. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to present some important information in regards to Every Little High School. First and foremost, we begin our process very similar to what has been described by others. I don't go to each department and say, this is your chunk of money that's been allocated for you to spend. We go through a very, very strong process of saying, what are your needs? And to be sure that it's not a duplication of something that's already been purchased. Verify, is this something new to the budget? Is this something that's been existing in the years past? Very similar to what Mr. Griffin said. Are we needing to purchase 2 new microscopes, or do we continue to have those microscopes that need to be serviced? So we do a very rigorous process with that. The departments come to me with their proposals, and you know, the number of pens and papers and tissues, those stay pretty stable throughout from year to year. We have a good base history of what those needs are. So even if those are ongoing costs, I ask them to submit that. We review that. Those are many in the hall conversations, as well as 2 sit-downs with me to make sure that what their requests are aligned to the district goals and objectives, as well as the building goals and objectives, and make sure that they are aligned to curriculum needs and not something frivolous. From there, then I spend 2 follow-up meetings with Mr. Hansen and Dr. Brown to kind of go over where those things line up and where things have moved up and where things have moved down to make sure that we understand all the details. So that's a little bit about the process. What we have before you on this first slide is some of our enrollment information. And so what we had from 1920, and this was as of May 8th in last school year, we had an enrollment of 920, and you see the breakdown of 249, 226, 239, and 206. Our enrollment right now of 933 is a reflection of 275, 224, 210, and 219 across the grades. And then projecting for next year, that 243 is the number that is sitting in Power School to reflect the 8th graders that would be transitioning up. It's hard to project how many would come and go in terms of transfers in and out, but what we can say is this is what we're projecting to come up from the middle school. So you see the 276, and it should say 226 and 210. That is what we're projecting for next year. So it goes from 920 to 933 to 956, to give you an explanation of where we're projecting for our enrollment. Very typical to what you've heard Dr. Brown say before. I offer those numbers because as I do my budget development, I look at last year, what do we need this year, and where are we projecting the following year. So I think that's a good little snapshot. What you see before you is the number of teachers in each academic department, what we have currently at this time and what we are projecting for next year. We have 11.5 in English, 11 in science currently right now, and that science includes the computer science teacher. Mr. Eisenman is dedicated as a computer science teacher. Social studies 10, math 10, fine arts, aspirations, world language, health and phys ed are 5. Our ELL teachers are 2, and our special ed is 11.5. You may ask the question about the 0.5 in English and the 0.5 in special ed. Last year we took our instructional coach who has a strong background in literacy and reading recovery and split that between special ed and reading recovery in the regular ed program. So that's where that 0.5 is reflected in special ed and in English. What we're projecting for next year is 10.5 in English, 11 in science, 9 in social studies. That would be due to a retirement that's happening this year. And then the rest of the numbers stay stable until we get down to special ed, which is at 7.5, and that reflects some movement within the district that Mr. Fairchild has spoken to you before. We'll follow up and give you again in his following presentation, so you can see that the total faculty teacher is from 70 this year, projecting at 65 for next year. Kind of a breakdown on our ed tech all the way through down to JMG of 11.73, 14.14, 12.96, so on. So you can see that English has continued to hold at one of our smallest class size ratios in the building. What we had last year was 12.31. We came down to 12.25 this year, but again, that data point that's real important is that was last year was over 6 periods, and this was over 8 periods. So this is yes. So we took all of the English teachers, you know, their average, and then average that average. And so when we take that average, you know, if you teach 6 subjects, I take your first period, second period, third period, fourth, and then add those together and divide by the number of courses that you taught.
So, I'm sorry, I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you have 11 teachers who teach English, and you have, oh, sorry. You have 11 teachers that teach English, and there's 11 kids in the class in each of those.
The average class across the department.
Okay, so each teacher has about 11 kids in their class.
Average size from there.
All right, thank you.
For whatever reason, that's a duplicate slide, Mr. Hanson.
I think so.
I caught it before. I was hoping that it was going to be raised. This is just to kind of give you a sense of some of the course offerings that we have. We have our dual enrollment, our articulated courses, and our on-site college courses. Our dual enrollments tend to be the AP classes that have a partnership with one of the colleges, so that if the student is enrolled in the AP class, they also get that dual enrollment from the college. We have those articulated classes, our on-site courses, which are similar to dual enrollment, so they get EL credit as well as the college credit. We have those partnerships with Central Maine Community College and Thomas College. That's been a growing area, as well as what we've known for many years, the SUPA project, Syracuse University. So those are some of those highlights, as well as our Bridge Year programs, which are in partnership with University of Maine at Farmington, University of Maine at Fort Kent. So over the 2 years, students are earning high school credit and then finish with 1 year of college credit, as well as their part. As well as their work at, for some of those students, depending on the program that they're in, because they're part of the CTE program, they could be earning credit toward getting into the community college and already be moving into their certificate programs over there. I have a listing of our AP courses, and one thing that I would like to highlight is that we're in the process of adding in AP World History for next year. And then, as of August, this past year, we had 236 classes, not sections, but classes, and 96 of them were singletons, and many of the ones you see in front of you would be considered a singleton class. And then, just to highlight some of the other staff that we have in the building, our nurse, our librarian, guidance, our JMG resource. The area that I really wanted to look at for you is our social workers. We have 3 social workers that are in partnership with St. Mary's, Health Affiliates, and Spurwing. They work with individual students. And right now we're projecting that for next year we would have 2. One would be a transfer within the district, and another one would be a position that hopefully you would support that would be focused on building-wide emotional needs and systematic approaches for the emotional needs of students. And that is particularly of importance as we start talking about bringing students back into a regular school experience and what we have to make sure that we're mindful of and planning overall as they've been in this situation since March of 2020, to really be sure that we are very thoughtful and have a person whose entire focus is on the emotional well-being of all students in the building. Our social workers that we have now are fantastic, but they are working with individual students. And the other social worker that we're talking about is to really spearhead our truancy program and really track after that and develop a team, so that as this has become an area that we've spent a significant amount of time in tracking and developing and creating plans with, that we need that other set of resources to be able to take us to that next level to start supporting the student and the family at what are those barriers that are outside of school to bring them inside of school. At our school, you'll hear over and over, if I can get them in the building, we can do something, and we can get them on a path for success. And we have many, many pathways of that, and you've heard that before. But this is to develop that resource of how do we get them out of the house and to us.
Would that be an Auburn School Department employee?
Yes, sir. And the secretarial staff that never gets enough credit, I just wanted to highlight that there's a movement from 3 guidance secretaries to 2, and that's a reflection of retirement this year. And I'm really happy to announce that the vacant secretarial position in the main office that had been vacant for so long has been filled as of December, so the rest of those numbers stay pretty stable right there. And then our last slide is just to kind of give you a snapshot of some of the other things that are happening within our building. We have 1 daytime custodian, we have 3 evening Auburn District employee custodians, as well as our contract with Allstate, and 5 food service members who are doing an incredible job. We had our first grab-and-go lunch today, and it went very, very well, and staff were well prepared for that, and that's a credit to the teachers making sure that the students had the lunch selections, and our food service staff being at the right places. We were off by 5 in the front and 6 in the back. I was very, very proud of them, and they were ready to make any other additional adjustments if the need arose.
Any questions for Mr. O'Neill?
I do. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole in this, but I'm curious. On this chart, the average class size by department. Does that suggest class sizes are bigger this year than last year?
It's hard because we're working at 2 different metrics, because last year we would have been looking at classes of 6, and this year we were very intentional, because what we took out last year that we typically would see in a teacher's teaching schedule of 8 periods, we took out the learning lab duty and the prep time, and we moved the prep time at the end, and we tried to maximize every part of the hours that we had with them. So teachers are teaching 4 straight classes through the morning. So to answer that, it's tough because we're looking at 2 different, we're comparing it to 8 periods versus 6 periods. But there was a decrease, which was intentional to offer more sections, as we were trying to be mindful through the summer and August of trying to have the class sizes as small as possible.
I just think on first glance, when I look at these as a primary person, I look at, well, it'd be really nice to have kindergarten class sizes of 13, but I have to remember that there's multiple times you have that many. It's not just you have 13 kids in front of you all day. It's 13 times. I teach this 4 times right now, or 6 times in the year. You know.
You're absolutely right. Like you got to kind of look into it. You know, one of the areas that you see are some of the staff that will teach in what we would traditionally call an upper level. Like you often see it in a world language where we're teaching 8 kids in that 4th year AP experience. But then 2 periods later, they have 27 kids that are in Spanish 1.
Right.
So you have to kind of run that average through.
Because as a primary person, I had a little minor heart attack there, thinking, oh my gosh, why are they so low? But okay, thank you. I just have to get my mind wrapped around that one. All right, any other questions from Mr. O'Neill?
My last piece, just to highlight, as we are examining what next year's classes and enrollments begin, we started kicking off the course recommendations, and so that is a major driver of trying to understand how to build the schedule to make sure that if we have enough to sustain a class, that's a section that we would need to cover. So that process began, and then from there it turns into us working with the middle school to try to identify those teacher recommendations for next year. So it's all kind of in flux, but those are the numbers of where we stand today.
Is there a number, when you're thinking about your singleton classes, is there a number that you have in mind that we really can't offer this class because we didn't have enough interest?
You have to look at it very carefully on a case-by-case basis, but in my head, we kind of start the bar at 10. But that isn't to say that if we had 8, like I said, some of those world language situations, or we have an AP, we start looking at, are there opportunities to cluster? And are there, or is that do we have enough demand for that? In my head, 10 is where we kind of start, but we need to have some conversations and see what that is. And you have to look at it within a department and see what the capacity is within that department. We've also started conversations, Shelley and myself, and some of the other area principals, because of where we found ourselves this year and the opportunities for technology and some remoteness. We've started some level of conversation. Our focus has been on the overall schedule, but are there some opportunities to share some resources and have some other offerings for some AP classes that could be done from a remote setting, or because we're trying to avoid some of the transportation barrier. Like, we can transport them, but we don't want to be losing time in that transportation. So that's an ongoing conversation. We've done that in the past. We have provided an opportunity for students from Lewiston before to come over for an AP class. They have been open and willing to being able to do that. Now it's really to try to develop a little bit of a more of a cohesive sequence to that, and who can offer. There's some offerings at Lewiston that we don't have, and some that we have that they don't have, and so we look to see if there's a way to share that. And you have to look at it on a kid-by-kid basis, but we're trying to be a little more mindful of how can we do that as we build the schedule from the beginning.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Anita? Okay, thank you so much. Hello, welcome.
Got me a little nervous about the chair. I don't want to end up on the floor. So, thank you for your time this evening. I know you're probably happy to hear that I'm the last of the presentation, so I certainly appreciate your attention and your the time to share with you about Franklin and our budget. So, I'll start off by talking a little bit about enrollment at Franklin this year. Our program is designed so that typically our class size is capped at 15 students. That was different this year due to our COVID protocols. We were at a 10 to 12 cap for classes based on the size of the room. Because our student population was determined to be one of the ones that was going to do the 4-day cohort, that's why our class sizes, as they're listed, are between that 10 and 12, okay? So we, because our numbers change almost on a daily basis, we're unique within the school district in that our student enrollment is all based on referrals, and we take referrals throughout the year. So our numbers have even changed today from what I put together on this slide. Right now, we have a total of 4 openings available in the program based on our capacity. 2 at the middle school level and 2 at the 10th grade level, because I did have 1 upper level opening that I have an interview for tomorrow. So we have been very busy this year. We've had some really great students come in, but our cohorts are at capacity right now. So I talked about that. An example, and so when we looked at our projected enrollment for next year, those numbers are based upon the kids that are sitting in those cohorts right now. And so starting the year, next year, we would have a potential to have 65 students when we end school in June. Now, for example, this past summer, between June and September, I had interviewed and enrolled an additional 12 students. Then over the course of this whole year, I have enrolled, at the time that this was written, 43, but now 45 students throughout the year. So our enrollment continues to shift and change and increase over the course of the year. That 65 number also is minus the anticipated graduates that we have this year, because we go 7 to 12. So for next year's staffing and what we're getting that 90 number from, we are looking at a reduction of 1 teacher to our staff. This is not necessarily related to the enrollment piece so much as it's due to a change in our projected out-of-district tuition. We have traditionally had a pretty sizable group of students from Lewiston that have been enrolled at Franklin at the state rate tuition of about $9,240 each. We had anticipated this year having 13 students enrolled from Lewiston. They have made some changes to their offerings that has impacted the number of students that they have referred to our program. And when I was asked by Dr. Brown and Mr. Hansen, you know, what will that look like next year? The most I could say I was sure of was about 5 students because they're not doing that referral. So that does indicate a significant revenue change from what we have experienced in the past through that relationship with Lewiston. So in order to compensate for that, that does indicate a staff reduction for us, which does lower our capacity for students by 15. As far as moving forward, so on the more positive note, as far as our initiatives, the things that we really excel at Franklin, which I know I have told you time and time again, so just bear with me, are aiding students in credit recovery in order to get to graduation on time. We have a large section of our students that come to us credit deficient with lots of gaps in their learning. Supporting and coaching students to attain and keep employment to become productive members of the community upon graduation, and providing a supportive and safe environment for students in Auburn who are struggling to be successful at places like AMS or EL, and to provide those students with some more of the skills that they may be lacking to reach their academic potential that they may not be able to get without that level of support. So the initiatives that we have that tie back into our budget that support that are things like continuing our training programs in the culinary arts and in welding, in continuing our partnerships with the YMCA for our wellness programs, and then continuing to develop ourselves as educators in a trauma-sensitive educational model for our staff through staff development, and continuing to offer things like the Power Source curriculum that we offer to students that builds emotional literacy and resiliency in our students. We do that with a partnership with New Beginnings. So some of the things that you see as initiatives where some of our money goes is to support those kinds of things, to build those skills and those things in our students. As far as new initiatives for next year that I'm hoping to grow, develop partnerships with places like the LA Metropolitan Chamber, to have that partnership build some more understanding about what the workforce in Lewiston Auburn is in need of, and then also to provide educational opportunities back to our students. Started to do a little work in setting the groundwork for that this year. And lastly, I did highlight some minor changes to our budget. I won't go through those in detail, but the one that is a significant increase was for some of our digital classroom resources. That's because of the ECASIS test that we use as a benchmarking test at Franklin. We buy that in bulk every few years because there's a price break. So we just basically are getting to the point where we're running out. We need to replenish that staff. So overall, we're coming in our budget at $35,276. It's about 9% decrease over last year's budget.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
I just had, if I remember correctly, the difference with Lewiston is they used to pay for a set amount of students, whether we had that many students or not, correct? Okay.
Yes.
And that change was this year?
So the change was last year with that when they had a new superintendent come in, that became more of a per diem, so they paid per student.
Right, okay.
Yep.
And then you're projecting only 5, which is a big decrease from what we're used to, correct? You said?
Well, we had 8 this year.
Okay.
So which we had accounted for having 13, so that was a decrease. I got the number 5 because right now we have 4 students from Lewiston enrolled that are underclassmen. We have 1 senior. So that was what I can reasonably count on, is I'm going to have 4 students who would carry through, and then potentially another referral. But I don't want to overshoot that and then find that we're not having.
Do we know why the number's so less? Is it just about money?
Well, they've started some new programming that they're utilizing to meet the needs of the students before a referral to us would come through.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Any other questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Brown, I'm wondering, I realize in transparency, we do have one school that has not been reported out on right now. Can anyone take us through the Walton Elementary School?
Going to have Walton at a later date. Mr. Davis is not able to join us today. He, for some of you that know, he fell at Walton and needs to sit home for a bit. And so he'll be back at another night. So he will present that budget.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
And so just to wrap up the budget presentation for this evening, the next presentation will be March 3rd. That will be special education, and Mr. Fairchild will go through the various programs that we have, the positions, the student counts, where those programs are located, and any reductions that he is recommending for special education. And you may refer to the January 20 memo and presentation that he gave to you regarding RATC, because RATC figures prominently into some of the recommendations that he's making as part of the 21-22 budget process. And at this point, I'd be happy to take general questions before we continue with the rest of the agenda.
I just have a few. When we talk about the budget, was the budget created through the lens of a 5-day full return, school is back to normal next year type of scenario?
Yes.
Okay. And the other question I have, because this one will come for public, is just really the accountability on the school department's part to sort of respond to questions about potentially the increase in, although we've heard about decreases tonight, but just the general, how we are balancing the relief money we got and how that's reflected within the budget that is presented to us here.
That's a great question. What Mr. Hansen and I will do is to prepare for you an updated accounting of how the CRF1, CRF2, CRF 2.1, and CARES funds either have been spent or are being planned to spend. And the only caveat I would remind folks is that when we were first notified of those funds, they had a very short shelf life, and they had to be spent quickly. That changed. The department moved that goalpost again as one of several changes as part of that regulation. But nevertheless, what we'll do is we will prepare a complete summary of how those monies were spent.
Thank you. Any other general questions for Dr. Brown and the school department at this time? Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
I know a lot of work goes into all of that, so thank you so much. All right. Give me just a moment, but moving on, we are going into the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Mrs. Mogul if she would come up and speak to her memorandum. And just to set the table for Mrs. Mogul, we have talked about literacy a great deal. And one of the things, and Mrs. Hart brought it up earlier in the conversation, pertained to our current program, which is the Lucy Calkins program, and evaluating it. And so Shelley, if you would speak to your memo and the process that you plan to use to do that, please.
So, through Doris, came across a great resource that lays out a process for doing a literacy program review. And we've been talking with our literacy specialists about what to do next, knowing that we've made some fabulous purchases thanks to CRF, and we have very rich, diverse classroom libraries. We have a phonics program in place. We have some guided reading small group instruction resources that teachers are very excited about. That would be the literacy footprints, which I think you've heard about. And the consensus was that we really need to take a moment to say, what do we have in place? What do we need before we make a decision to do just pick a program? So what we've done is to put together, put out word to teachers to put together what we're calling a district literacy leadership team.
And as of today, I have 25 staff members who signed up to be part of that team. We have covered from pre-K through high school. We have ELL representation, we have special ed representation, we have representation from every building. And we're hoping to launch that process the week of March 8th and meet weekly outside of school hours and come to some recommendations from that literacy program review by the week of April 12th. And that positions us to be able to potentially pilot something new, if that's the recommendation of the group, after April vacation. So the group is really excited. The process includes looking at the various components of our literacy instruction. So the big group gets broken out into smaller work groups, focus on one component or another. There are teacher surveys, there are parent surveys, there are student surveys. We are in the process of collecting, Sue Doris and I, of collecting really detailed STAR assessment data that we can use as part of the review process. And as I said to Karen in our last curriculum subcommittee meeting, we'll continue to keep all of you informed through the curriculum subcommittee. There'll be regular updates on our progress. So that is the plan as it stands right now.
Any questions for Shelley right now?
You spoke about the STAR exam. Do we have any data on that from this year yet?
I think Sue I think that the fall screening data was included in the State of the Schools report. We just recently finished the winter screening and we're looking at some of that data now. But the winter screening data will be the majority of what we use for this program review.
And the fall STAR data was shared with us back probably in binder number 3 or 4 that I talked about a little while ago. Yes.
We can get it out to you again at any point.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Ellie.
Thank you.
School committee chairperson's report. I wanted to let you all know, and you have this as part of your onboarding package tomorrow night. Through Zoom, I will be attending the regional meeting for the Maine School Board Association. The agenda is included in what will be discussed tomorrow night, and I will come back after the meeting and fill you in on what that regional meeting entails. City Council, I think we're good on that one, Mr. Carey even said. So moving on to committee reports. We have lots of committee reports this evening. Policy has met. You've got the subcommittee, the curriculum subcommittee meeting agendas in here. So finance and policy have been pretty busy. The other subcommittees have pretty much remained quiet right now. Tell me if I'm missing anything, but I think
Karen.
everything was included. Yes, go ahead, Brian.
I got a quick update on the technology committee. Subcommittee.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah, we met this evening, actually. We were finally able to catch up based on my schedule. And I thought it was kind of important to note a few things, give people kind of an update on a few things. So we're still waiting on MLTI before we can set a whole lot of direction. That's still up in the air right now. One of the things that that Peter and Dr. Brown have brought up was that we had purchased the hotspots and we were using the hotspots during the pandemic. Unfortunately, the state, as of June 30th, is going to no longer pay for those devices. So we have about 200 devices. Peter mentioned that right now, if we stayed with the plan, it would cost us about $15 a device per month. But they're actually working with T-Mobile to get, essentially, I think, cover that cost, right, Dr. Brown? And it would be available for those kids that are eligible for the free or reduced program. So hopefully that will help cover the costs there. I got an update on the Pro AV equipment usage. I kind of asked Dr. Brown and Peter kind of how it was being used and if it was being used and if we could track it. And Dr. Brown had gotten them a update from Principal Griffin saying that at the middle school that they're using it about at 80%. Obviously different levels of interest, different levels of usage, but that it's being adopted quite well there, and also at the elementary levels as well. So it does look like they are starting to use that equipment and use it fairly well, so, which is good. The other big update was that we're in the process of collecting all the laptops for resale. This was something we had planned to do where we would be collecting, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Brown, but about 1,000 to 1,500 laptops, and we have one bid from, or one option from Second Life that will pay about $200 a device, as long as they're in working condition. These are 5-year-old devices, so that's a pretty good deal to obtain some of that money back, which is good. But Peter is looking at a couple other options just to kind of do some due diligence and make sure that is our best option. But right now, it looks like we'll have about 1,500 devices at about $200 a piece, so that's pretty good. Let's see if there's anything else. I think the only other thing was that, and this went back to January, so it's been in place for a little while, but all of the elementary rooms now have charging stations, which I thought was pretty good for all the iPads, and each charging station will charge up to 10 devices. So the idea is that these kids can leave their chargers at home so that the cubes aren't getting mixed between kids, lost, and so forth. So just gives the kids an option to charge their devices at home, bring the devices in, but if they need to be charged, then we have the charging stations, which is good. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Brian.
I have a question. So you talked about the hotspots and T-Mobile. Brian, wasn't something suggested with the city council as far as to try to minimize costs? We can use.
And in through the street lights.
Yeah.
We're still waiting for a projected cost for that.
Okay.
There was some issues that they're working through right now, but I can check with Tim and Derek to see where they are on it.
I was just wondering if maybe we could do something like that.
Yeah, we had some brief discussions around that. Obviously, it's, like I mentioned with Dr. Brown and Peter, it's bigger than just the school department. There's the cost of the upfront cost of getting that established. Because again, these rural areas is probably not light posts today. So the upfront, as far as getting that cost, that upfront infrastructure, I think is the pieces you were talking about, Brian, that they're trying to figure out.
Right. The lights would have to be fitted with another piece of equipment to make them project, and we would have to look at the overall cost, the areas that we would have to do, and then work backwards on the projected cost. I mean, there's going to be areas that we really don't need to worry about, and so we have to just look at the cost for that.
And my question, who has accessibility to that? Would you need a code?
Well, the city has to have the lights, would have to have the lights upgraded, but it would be a shared cost, I would assume, being able to do that. I mean, we've done, the hard work's already been done, all the lights have already been replaced. I believe we're at 100% on our switching to the street lights. So.
Thank you, Brian. And Brian. All right, moving on. Finance report. Can I entertain a motion to accept the finance report for January 2021 as presented, please?
Moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carrier. Thank you, Mr. Belknap. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, take a vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Motion passes. And that includes all of this. Moving on to old business. Policy IKFC, the graduation requirement. Can I entertain a motion to approve policy IKFC, graduation requirements for a second reading? And just as a reminder, that is to change the community volunteer hours. Can I entertain a motion, please? So moved. Thank you, Faith. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Belknap. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, can I have a vote, please? All those in favor? None opposed. Motion passes. New business subcommittee appointment. Can I entertain a motion to appoint Brian Belknap to the reentry committee, please? Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Any questions, comments? All right, vote please. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion passes. Federal funds, a motion to use. Here we go with all the letters. CRF, comma, ESSER1, just cares, and/or ESSER2. Federal grant funds in the order that to extend the current Auburn School Day Child Care Program through the end of the 2020-2021 school year at no cost to Auburn families. So moved. Thank you, Can.
Second.
And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions or comments on that one? Seeing none, I have a vote, please. All those in favor? None opposed, motion passes. Franklin School bid. Can I entertain a motion to award the contract for the Franklin School elevator and bathroom project to H.E. Cowling and Construction for a base bid price of $834,500. Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Can I have a second?
Moved.
No, Mr. Carrier, thank you very much. Any questions or comments on that one? Seeing none, can I have a vote, please? All those in favor? Thank you, motion passes. Policy IJJ, the selection of educational materials. Can I entertain a motion to approve policy IJJ, please? Thank you, Mr. Carrier. And a second? Second. Thank you, Faith. Any questions, comments on that one? Seeing none, take a vote, please. All those in favor? None opposed, motion passes. Policy JFABD, education of homeless students. Can I entertain a motion to approve policy JFABD, please?
So moved.
Hearing a lot. What is that we hear? I have absolutely no idea. Have a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on that one?
Question actually,
Sure.
and it's more of my own learning. How do we define homelessness among the student body?
How do we define homelessness? I'm going to defer to Michelle.
No, like a federal definition, but like for educational purposes is, and what is, like if a kid spends a night at the New Beginning shelter, technically, by definition, they're homeless.
Yes, that would be correct.
So that's what it is, it's one night removed from,
It's a little bit more involved than that, but yes, there is three kind of prongs to the criteria. Yeah, it's talking about disruption to access to a stable, regular, adequate nighttime residence. Those are the
perfect.
three.
I was just very curious about that, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, can I have a vote, please? All those in favor of approving policy JFABD? Seeing none opposed, motion passes. Thank you. All right, upcoming meetings. Only two are listed on here, March 3rd and March 17th. However, way back when you received this packet regarding budget development, every single date Wednesday in March is an upcoming meeting. So please keep in mind that every Wednesday, 6 o'clock, I think from now until April 14th or something like that, we will be meeting every Wednesday. So March 3rd, 10th, 17th, 24th, 31st, those are all either a regular meeting or for budget purposes only, okay? Future agenda items or requests for information?
I'd like to revisit the motion Dr. Brown made, I don't know when it was, to allow kids who are failing core classes to return 4 days a week. There's been a lot of improvements with COVID-19. There's been a lot of recommendations from the highest, health, CDC, everyone else around this, and I think the way it was presented, it was within the guidelines of the CDC, and I'd like to revisit that as a school committee. Thank you.
Any others?
I'm going to piggyback on that one. I'd like to see the reentry committee look at bringing us back totally to 4 days a week. Wednesdays off. 4 days.
I think right now, and I'm going to just sort of speak, I think the reentry committee's next projected date was March 17th. Is that correct, Sean?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other requests?
Actually, when we do meet with the reentry committee, I would like to request that the specific people from the committee be here to answer questions, not just put it all on Michelle, but that the
So
committee-
representation maybe from different buildings,
Yes,
different
from different
teachers,
parts of
nurses.
the committee.
Okay. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, anything else? Seeing none, can I entertain a motion to adjourn, please? I think I heard quorum over here. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Belknap. All those in favor of adjournment? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned.